6 o'clock. Can I firstly welcome you all to this meeting of the Governance and Audit Committee of the 22nd of April 2024. Before we start, please can I remind everyone that this meeting is being live streamed and the recording archived for future viewing. If a participant wishes to speak, please use the raise hand function to alert me that you would like to speak. I will indicate when it's your turn to speak, so please then select the request to speak button, which will allow you to come on screen. Please ensure that all debate is raised verbally and not via the chat function. The chat function should only be used to highlight any technical issues and to get the attention of myself or the Democratic Services officers. So thank you for that. Can I also give my apologies for the last meeting? As you know, I was in Llandudno, and for those old enough to remember the Wheel Tappers and Shunters Club with Norman Collier, I think it was a bit like that. I was in and out like the Okie Kokie. So my apologies for that, and can I just thank Nigel for chairing the meeting in my sort of somewhat absence, but also being present at the meeting. So thank you for that, and thank members for allowing me to do so. Part one of the agenda then. Item 1 is apologies for absence. Are there any?
Just Councillor Wood, Chair, has indicated he may be late to the meeting, but he'll try and join as soon as he can. Other than that, no apologies, Chair.
Okay, thank you for that. Item 2 of the agenda is the minutes of the meeting held on the 11th of March 2024, and they're contained at pages 1 to 9. These are for correctness only. Someone prepared to move, please? Thanks, Cooper. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Matthew. Yes. Oh, thank you, Nigel. I've also got Nigel and Councillor Norman. Thank you very much. Anyone against? No, they're carried. Thank you very much. Item 3 then, to receive any declarations of interest. Do we have any? No, none shown. So item 4 then, we go on to the digital strategy review, Vale of Glamorgan Council, Corporate Performance and Resources Scrutiny Committee of the 20th of March 2024. I think, Tom, you're taking this report. The only issue I'd like to make is there's no one from Audit Wales here this evening. And given that we are the Governance and Audit Committee, it would seem prudent that someone from Audit Wales should be here to take any questions that we may have. So I'm just wondering whether that could be raised with Audit Wales as to why they're absent, and hopefully in the future they could attend when there's a report coming before this committee.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening. I think the to answer that point before the report, Audit Wales colleagues, when they produce a local report, have indicated that due to their resourcing, they're able to attend and present that to one committee. So the protocol we've agreed with them is that they would come and report that to the relevant scrutiny committee, and then the views of that committee along with the reference would come to your committee. But I can certainly feed that back, because ordinarily we would have somebody from Audit Wales here for other items, but I can certainly feed that back if committee would like me to.
Well, that's my view. I don't know whether the committee would agree it, but I think given we are the Governance and Audit Committee and we were seeking assurance in regards to these issues, and I know with all due respect you will have, or the authority will have provided a response by way of action plan to the recommendations. I do think that in some respects the Audit Wales should be here to answer questions, because many members, I should imagine, this committee are not on the scrutiny committee, and therefore certainly all the independent members are not on any of the scrutiny committees, and then we just need to get some questions in regards to maybe the assurance that and the issues that they are raising in the report. So if you could do that, Tom, I'd be extremely grateful.
Certainly feed that back, Chair, not a problem at all.
Thank you.
And thank you for taking the reference. As you say, this is coming to your committee from Corporate Performance and Resources Committee. It relates to a local study that Audit Wales undertook in terms of our digital readiness. They were doing this piece of work at all 22 local authorities. They are going to be publishing a national study relating to digital, and the council is awaiting that, and we'll respond to it as soon as we find it. So in terms of the findings from Audit Wales's work, the main finding is that they found that the council's taking the sustainable development principle into account in developing arrangements for delivery of the digital strategy, but the monitoring arrangements of that are underdeveloped. And they based that finding on a series of sort of sub-findings that we're making good use of internal evidence sources, but we've made limited use of external evidence sources, that we have a clear vision for using digital technology, but not articulated how that impacts on other public bodies. The council has identified who needs to be involved in developing the digital strategy and plans to consult widely, but it's not yet clear how we would look to collaborate with partners in delivering that strategy. That we've taken steps to ensure that resources are in place to take forward the strategy, but there's further work to do in respect of delivering savings. The council doesn't monitor progress of its strategic approach to digital, and that there are weaknesses in performance measures. And finally, that we've reviewed our previous digital strategy and committed to reviewing the new strategy, but it's not clear at this stage of the work how lessons learned from the implementation of the previous digital strategy will be shared. It's at this point that I think it'd be useful to let committee know about the timing of the work that Audit Wales undertook. We were in the process of revising the digital strategy during the field work for Audit Wales's work, and therefore some of the findings relate to a point in time, but really usefully it was possible for us to take on board some of the emerging findings and to reflect those in the final version of the digital strategy, which Cabinet have now approved. So in terms of recommendations, as members will be aware, when Audit Wales undertake these pieces of work, they make recommendations which the council then is required to respond to. And they made 5 in total: that we should ensure our horizon scanning is more well advanced, that we should look at how our strategic approach to digital impact those other bodies, that we should ensure that we've considered opportunities to collaborate, that we should identify savings as a result of the strategy and ensure that our performance monitoring information is fully understood in terms of understanding our investment in digital, and then finally that we should develop arrangements for identifying and sharing lessons learned from the approach to our digital strategy. So the report itself from Audit Wales is contained in Appendix A for your reference this evening, Chair. And in Appendix B, the Council's organisational response form is included. Audit Wales will review the organisational response form before we take it to scrutiny committees, and they've noted the actions that we intend to take. When we presented this report to Corporate Performance and Resources Scrutiny Committee, they asked that further emphasis on the use of artificial intelligence and the opportunities that that could bring should be reflected. That has been responded to in as much as the feedback from the committee is incorporated into the digital strategy final version, and there is an increased emphasis on artificial intelligence. The committee also asked that we make sure that the importance of developing horizon scanning is really well embedded, and the team have taken that on board and are going to make sure that there's further reference to the work that we're doing, amongst others with organisations such as the Welsh Local Government Association and the Centre for Digital Public Services. And we'll take forward those opportunities for collaboration. The committee also spotted a typo, which we've now corrected as well. So the report is being brought to your committee, Chair, at this stage, following consideration by the Scrutiny Committee prior to Cabinet considering and being asked to endorse the action plan in response. And as with all recommendations from the regulators, these will be monitored on a quarterly basis by the Council's Strategic Insight Board. We'll report them then to the relevant scrutiny committees alongside the performance information quarterly, and your committee, Chair, will receive a 6-month update as part of the standalone regulatory recommendations tracking report and also the self-assessment processes. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Tom. Obviously, over to members for any questions. Nigel?
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick one, which is regarding the actions coming out. They seem to have a lot of elements which are, we're going to look into this. This is going to be developed throughout the strategy. This is going to be kind of happen as we go. I just wondered if there's going to be, I realise that the strategy quite rightly will evolve as it goes on. I just wondered whether we can get any more surety about any outcomes coming from those actions throughout the life, like if there's going to be another report back or something like that, because it just seems very kind of like, yeah, we'll kind of do that as we get onto it. Sorry if that came across a bit of a woolly question.
Thanks, Nigel. Tom?
Not woolly at all, Nigel, and certainly no woollier than the actions that are identified in the organisational response form. I think you're absolutely right that the point in time we were responding to this is just at the end of having reviewed our digital strategy. We're committed to doing an annual review and report on the progress of that strategy to Cabinet, and I think it's in that report that alongside the regulatory tracking that you'll see the progress and you'll see more precision in terms of those updates. We'll also be tracking and reporting against the performance indicators that have been updated following Audit Wales's findings to make them more precise. So I'm hoping that that approach will mean that you'll get more surety in terms of in effect, the essence of what Audit Wales is saying, which is we needed more precision in terms of what we're looking to deliver and more precision in terms of that link to return on investment and savings.
Anything further, Nigel? Anything further, Nigel? Connection. He's got the reverse this week. Hopefully Nigel will come back in. Is that okay? Thanks.
Yeah, overall that's good. Thank you.
Yeah, I think you were a bit like Norman Collier tonight as well. Councillor Hooper.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just referring to recommendation 4 about value for money, and digital's often seen as a way of saving money. And I just think that needs to be seen against the context of supporting people to live their lives in the Vale better, particularly those who are digitally excluded. And what I'd like to see in this strategy is some way of making sure that we are using digital not to the exclusion of others. So I'd like to understand how could they be better supported. Maybe that's a training and development opportunity in terms of the way that we go and discuss things with residents. Thank you.
Tom?
Thank you, Councillor Hooper, and absolutely, it's a really important point. And whilst the Council has identified that digital is a major plank of our transformation programme, which will contribute to savings, savings are not the only reason for wanting to use digital to transform, both in terms of how we use technology to free up time to create capacity within the organisation for colleagues to be able to undertake other aspects of their roles, but also really importantly, as you say, the digital exclusion agenda and making sure that people are not digitally disadvantaged is really important. And the strategy that the Council has adopted has got a series of commitments within there, specifically related to digital inclusion and furthering the work that we're already undertaking with partners, and also some specific references to ensuring that we can make sure that as many people's voices are heard in decision making. And if it's useful, Councillor Hooper and Chair, I can ask Democratic Services colleagues to circulate the final version of the digital strategy so members can have a look at it after this meeting if that's useful.
Yeah, thank you, Tom. That'll be well received. Are there any? Oh, Councillor Prothero.
Thank you, Chair. Very quick question for Tom, because it was one of the points that I think has been made by us in this report, and that was that we were looking to set up a digital programme board, which obviously is going to help to focus and keep the topic, I suppose, just on digitalisation. So I just wanted to ask if we've done that yet. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Prothero. The strategic leadership team met with cabinet members on Thursday last week to have a look at the prospectus or the portfolio of projects for the transformation programme and to talk about the governance arrangements that would facilitate that. The digital programme is one of 5 or 6 that will have individual boards, and colleagues from across the organisation have now been nominated to sit on that board. The head of digital is working through a terms of reference, and we will be bringing that board together imminently. A report will come to Cabinet now before the recess, outlining the delivery arrangements and the associated projects within reshaping. And we're also looking at bringing a separate standalone digital update to Cabinet and to Corporate Performance and Resources Committee in the next couple of months.
Councillor Prothero?
Excellent news.
Oh, sorry.
That's just excellent news. That's great. Thank you.
Any other questions? Tom, just a couple of questions from me. Firstly, the national study, as Audit Wales indicated, which month and year that will be produced, because obviously they'll need to bring together all their work from Wales. Secondly, have Audit Wales highlighted any good practice throughout Wales that they found in regards to the review of the digital strategy of each authority? And thirdly, picking up Councillor Hooper's point, there may not necessarily be savings in the first couple of years, because there may need to be an investor save, really, because again, just because you're bringing in digital doesn't mean there's going to be ultimately savings. There may be savings long term, but in the short term, there may need to be some investment into the strategy and into the proposals that are going to be run out into the community. So has any thought been given to that either?
Thank you very much indeed, Chair. Audit Wales haven't given me a month for the national study to be published, but at the last liaison meeting, they did indicate that it would be the spring or the summer of this year. And I'd be expecting in that report that, as usual, they'll probably highlight some case studies of good practice that they've identified. We've done a little bit of a trawl through the other reports that have been published on an individual authority basis to see if we can identify any particular areas of particular interesting practice. I know my colleague, the head of digital, has been talking to the chief digital officer in Neath Talbot, for example. They are probably 2 or 3 years ahead of where we want to be. So there's some opportunity for us to learn on from them. And we've also been discussing with some of the Gwent authorities as well. So we're trying to make some use of the individual authority reports ahead of the national one being published, if that makes sense. And in terms of the investor save, you're absolutely right. The council has established a digital reserve as part of the budget for this year, and the governance arrangements relating to that reserve are currently being finalised. But it's proposed that the head of digital will have the ability to sign off in consultation with myself up to a certain value, and then the digital programme board will also then review business cases in order to access that funding. And those business cases roughly follow the Treasury's 5-case model. So looking at making sure that we're connecting any proposed investment with the outcomes that we're seeking to deliver in the strategy, and obviously delivering good value for money as well. So the investment is there for us to make some access to when we've started to get that pipeline of projects put together.
Thank you for that, Tom. Are there any other questions? No? Any comments from anyone? No? The recommendations there, I think, firstly, we note the contents of the report from Audit Wales and the response that the council's given in regards to the recommendations. And I think the second point is, as you stated, that a further report will come to this committee in about 6 months' time as part of the update monitoring. And clearly, if there are any issues that arise as a result of the update monitoring, any slippage in the timescales or whatever, which members have been picked up, will be picked up at that date. So obviously, I would hope that we're happy for the Cabinet to have oversight and endorse the proposed council's actions and move forward on that basis. Someone prepared to move, please? Thank you, Councillor Hooper. Can I have a seconder? Thank you. Oh, thank you, Nigel and Matthew. Anyone against? No, that's carried. Item 5 of the agenda then is the Financial Management Code Update 23-24. Matt?
Thank you. Evening. I'm just going to give this a brief introduction, if that's okay. You'll recall that the code came into practice or into effect for 2021. We brought our first self-assessment against that code here last March. Going forward, it'll be part of our annual reporting process to you. We've slightly changed the timing of reporting this year. It was a little bit early last year, so we brought it a month or so later, and that does mean that we're able to reflect on a full financial year, and I think that tidies the process up for us. The important part of the report is section 2.5, which sets out our view that we strongly comply against the 6 principles in the code, and there's a detailed self-assessment in Appendix 1 to the report. You raised last year, rightly with us, that you'd like to see some independent assessment, and we've started our journey on that. You'll see at Appendix 2, the internal audit report, where they've reviewed the 2 components of Section 1 of the self-assessment. I think if we just did 2 every year, it'd be a long time before we actually got through the whole lot. So have spoken to Andrew about how we incorporate this into the audit plan in future years, and we perhaps need to pick off a couple of sections each year, and I think we can get through the self-assessment in a decent time period then. Audit did give us a substantial assurance, but they did pick up a couple of actions, and we're picking those up. We do need to actually update progress against the action plan. So we're in process of doing this, and we'll incorporate that into the report that goes to Cabinet, along with any comments that you might make this evening as well. So that's all I was going to say in terms of introduction.
Oh, thank you for that, Matt. Clearly, hopefully everyone's read the report. So, Councillor Hooper, questions?
Thanks, Matt. I'm interested in section 1 in the body of the report. The assessment is partly comply. I wonder whether you'd just be able to talk us through the difference between everything else is fully comply and that assessment is partly comply, what the difference is.
It is partly subjective, and I guess this section is the one that we've identified the greatest number of areas of development, and I think that's probably right. We do need to do a bit more in our consideration of social value, especially following on from the work we've done with the implementation of the new procurement strategy, which came into place last April. We're doing some work with Audit actually on our procurement arrangements, and we're going to streamline the social value components of the policy, so we can be more focused on where we need to drive out that social value. And we're also, I think we're probably grateful to SIPFA that they've delayed the implementation of IFRS 16 a couple of times, but there's more work to be done on that, albeit that earlier this calendar year we have set out with SLT our approach. So relatively, I think we're in relatively good health in this section, but just a couple of extra areas of development for us.
Any other questions from anyone? Councillor Prothero?
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to mention as well that my committee, Corporate Performance and Resources, has created a task and finish group which is focused on looking at the topic of where the council can focus its energies on making its procurements more sustainable, and also where it can actually achieve the greatest social value outcomes. So that's a piece of work. Hopefully by the autumn, I would have been able to put that review into a report with recommendations, which will obviously go to my committee first, but, you know, perfectly happy for it, once approved, to make its way to governance and audit if this committee would be interested in its findings too.
Thanks, Councillor Prothero. Matthew?
Thank you, Chair. Matt, it's probably a really nitpicky point, actually. The top one on the action plan from 23 to 24 and 24 to 25 is to reflect on budget setting process. And I feel like that's probably just something you should, it's just a BAU. It's not necessarily something that forms part of a self-assessment. So, I mean, I guess your call if you want to include it or not, but I feel like you'd have that on your action plan probably until the time that everybody moves on. So I wonder whether it might be worth considering whether this should be kept for things you flag as, rather than just, you know, I'm sure there's a lot of activity that you do by proxy, and this one feels like it falls into that. It's my observation.
I think that's probably a fair comment, because it'll be here in next year's action plan as well, otherwise, won't it? So yeah, let me go away and reflect on that. We'll probably drop it out. That's fair enough.
Any other questions? No, Matt, the only question I've got is great. It's there's some independent assessments for our audit team, which is really good. I'm just wondering whether or not that could be expanded at some time in the future as to having a peer assessor coming in just to look at it and give a you know, another overview in regards to it, whether we've got someone of an adjoining council or someone from SIPFA just to come in and sort of give a view on it. I'm not saying it needs to be done immediately, and you know, I'm not questioning the resources and the competency of our audit team, who are excellent. It's just whether we just get some independent assessment, and whether that would be worth doing in the future.
Yep, certainly I can explore that with colleagues from the Society of Welsh Treasurers. We meet monthly, so I can have that conversation with them.
Okay, if there are no other questions, are there any comments? No, we've got the recommendation. Oh, sorry, Councillor, my apologies.
That's all right. It's good to have some people in the room as well, isn't it? Just a general comment in the introduction. I think it's quite. Should give pause for thought. The paragraph, in recent years, an increasing number of English local authorities have been witnessing submitting Section 114 notices. And I think that probably explains why this is so important. But what it doesn't do is actually deal with the issue that local authorities are significantly underfunded in terms of being able to do their jobs. And whereas this is important, this is an opportunity for us to comment on this. And I think this is a point that needs to be raised, that actually we are just dealing with a situation where this is not getting better anytime soon. Thank you.
Noted. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor. As a matter of fact, that is in reality very difficult. So we got the recommendations. I think obviously we've reviewed the statement of on compliance with the Financial Management Code, and it's noted. And I think the contents of the review said it is forwarded to Cabinet. With that, I think that comment is very relevant in some respects, that, given the current financial position that the council and any other council finds itself in, and the possible implications in going forward, that if budget settlements, as indicated by Welsh Government, are cash flat for the next couple of years, then it's only going to get more and more difficult you said in the medium-term financial plan and balance in the budget. So I'm sure Cabinet will take that into consideration, if you're happy with that.
I should have added perhaps that there's certainly the time that SIPFA were pulling this code together and starting to work on it was at a time when some of the English councils who were issuing 114s were issuing them because of challenges around financial management. Certainly what we're seeing over the border the last year, and some recognition, and certainly the Chief Exec at SIPFA has said as much, that we're starting to see councils who you would perceive as being well run financially starting to struggle. So yes, those were good comments and very relevant for that reason.
So if you can pick that up in the recommendations, Gareth, someone prepared to move, please. Let's go to Hooper. Can I have a seconder? Thank you, Matthew. Anyone against? No, thank you. Item 6 then, progress against the internal audit risk-based plan 23-24. Andrew?
Thanks, Chair. Evening, members. This is the progress against the audit plan for 23-24, as the Chair has just said. And hopefully members will be now familiar with the format and the content of this report, as it's a regular report which we now bring into committee. The Regional Internal Audit Service has set itself targets internally for completion of the audit plan for Q1, 10%, Q2, 30%, Q3, 50%, and Q4, 80%. And the progress that we're reporting tonight is well on track to achieve that target for Q4. Because of timing of year end and Easter holidays, where some of the staff would have taken an Easter break to look after the children, and some of our auditees have taken an Easter break for the same reason, there's a timing issue of the data in which we're reporting. So the data has been captured towards the end of March, but not at the end of March. And this is kind of worst case scenario, really, in terms of the PIs we're reporting in. This evening, when we report in our annual report, which will come to you in June, there'll be a much more updated version of the performance indicators. So as at the date of the report, which is towards the end of March, we've achieved 69% of the plan within the Vale Glamorgan, as set out in Table 1, para 2.3 of your papers, where we've issued 59% of final reports and 10% of draft reports. So we still have some reports which are in progress, and the timing, we do have a cut-off, which was the 12th of April, but because of the timing of the report, some of that information hasn't been recorded within these stats. So it's looking likely that we're going to achieve the high 70s towards 80% of the plan. As I say, that will be reported in due course in our annual report. So it's looking good in terms of coverage across the whole service area and completion of the 23-24 plan. So of the reports that have been issued, we've issued 48 opinions, and over 80% of those are positive in that they're substantial or reasonable. We have also issued limited assurances opinions, and generally the limited assurance opinions are where the weaknesses we've identified outweigh the strengths within a particular audit review. Of the 9, 5 have already been reported into committee, 1 is still in draft and will be reported in due course, and of the 3 remaining, they're set out in paragraph 2.6 of the report, mainly the reasons why we felt it went into a limited opinion because of the key concerns we had within those particular areas. I don't intend to go into those in any detail, Chair, but they're there for members to read. We've also included a table around the 22-23 carried forward jobs at the request from members previously, and that's set out in Table 3, para 2.8. So of the 20 that were carried forward into 23-24, there's a list there. We're covering 70% of the work has been issued. Some of the work is in progress and likely to, we're to be included in our annual opinion, and 2 reports have been deferred subsequently to 24-25. Within the reports that we've issued within 23-24, we've made 228 recommendations, and those are set out in the appendix with the further detailed information about what work we've done in terms of completion and the opinions, and the details of those high and medium recommendations will follow in a further report this evening. So happy to take any questions, Chair.
Thank you for that, Andrew. Questions then, Councillor Hooper?
Thank you for that, Andrew. I'm just interested in how the 69% compares to last year. I know we should remember these things forensically, but I don't.
To be honest, Chair, I haven't got that information to date with me, but in my annual report, we will be reporting on a quarter-by-quarter basis and an annual basis, so that information will follow in due course.
Any other questions? Nigel?
Hopefully my internet will hold up. Just 2 questions from me. What's the likelihood that we're going to get the safeguarding audit? Because that was one that's been deferred and is one that we picked up on earlier in the year in terms of being completed. So just want to check on that one. And also, given the fact we approved the internal audit plan at the beginning of the year, I just wondered on the potential for whether we should be seeing things like the deferrals earlier to at least have some say into whether they are deferred or not, or some consultation on it. Other than that, just I think it's great work in terms of the amount of work you have completed during the year. So I'll get that comment in quick. But that's my 2 questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Nigel. Much appreciated. In terms of the deferred work, that is for a number of reasons. Sometimes it's due down to resources, sometimes it's at the request of a head of service or even a director to move that forward. But in terms of the detail, I think I'll hand you over to Joan.
Thank you. Answering your first question in respect of the safeguarding audit, that has recently been completed, so it will be included in the opinion for this year, and you'll have the details in the annual report. It was a timing issue, so that one has been completed. In respect of the work that has been deferred to 24-25, yes, they were the request of the auditees, mainly due to resources within the departments that we were going to audit. We did discuss that, and we came to a joint agreement, so they will be picked up. In fact, some of them have actually been started already, so you will see those in 24-25. In respect of, some have been started, but in some respects, the capital work that has been deferred has been requested to be picked up in Q2. It was felt that that was more appropriate to do that, to give the finance team some breathing space, and that our work would be more meaningful. Thank you.
Councillor Prothero?
I was just wanted to go back to one of our limited assurances, and that was on the food costs and residential homes. It just seems quite a strange title, because the narrative really just explains about the things that they've picked up to do with the raising of purchase orders and the invoicing process and the lack of oversight, and then on the food waste and whether or not people who work in the care homes have the food that they eat and there's no record of it. So my questions really quickly are, what do we spend on food annually in our care homes? I don't know whether that was even looked at, and what contractual arrangements underpin the food that they buy in care homes? Because they seem to be quite relevant questions to me if we're looking at the food costs. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Prothero. Joan, or can you assist with that?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Prothero, for that question. This was an allocated piece of work we were asked to do. There were concerns within the homes that potentially there could have been fraud or unaccounted for items of stock. So it was quite a focused piece of work that we did, and the conclusions and the recommendations that came from the work that we did meant had to be made because we felt the controls were so weak we couldn't with any reliability say yes or no there was any fraud. So it was a focused piece of work. We did have regard to the amount of money that was being spent in the contracts and the various things that you have raised, and that was in our report. We will be going back because it was a limited assurance. We will be going back to make sure that that has been put in place, and hopefully then that will allay fears that there were any frauds or there weren't any frauds, and it was a fact that there wasn't any records or weak controls. Does that answer the question?
Councillor Prothero, does
Thank
that
you.
satisfy your question? Thank you. Andrew?
Thank you. Yes. So it's really not really food costs. It was more a stock food audit, wasn't it? Which is absolutely fine. Thanks ever so much.
That's right, Councillor. Yeah, thanks. And just to reiterate for members and give them some assurance, where we issue a limited opinion, we will go back and follow that up within the next audit year, so that it will be included within our plan for 24-25, and we'll be reporting back the updated opinion back into committee in due course.
Councillor John, good evening.
Evening. Apologies, I'm not with you. I have a sick cold, and I think you're all glad I'm not spreading it around. I would like to know about the reasons that you're giving for deferral, and if there's any inclusion of how important the audit is as part of that decision-making scheme. So, for example, this time you've deferred the budget savings review to review the monitoring of budget savings. And I would count that as, especially right now, in this time of financial instability and the cost of living crisis, knocking on to how much we can increase council tax, as quite an important piece of work. And for that to be deferred is a bit of a shame to see. So how much are you considering how crucial that particular piece of work is to do? I know corporate performance had a lot this year, but I'd be interested in your opinion on that.
Andrew?
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Yes, I think if it's the job is included in our audit plan, it is important. We've got a very long list of everything that we could potentially audit. So everything included in the plan is important, but we do have to prioritise certain things, and we try our best to work with our auditees because we have to develop a positive relationship. Even though we do maintain our independence and our objectivity, if the auditees can't commit to providing us with resource or their time, then we do have to consider either moving that back to Q3 or Q4 in the year, or even potentially moving that into the next audit year, which is 24-25. We would endeavour then to make sure that all deferred work is undertaken in either Q1 or Q2 at the very latest, unless we're given a really good justification for deferring it any further. But we're happy to report that back into committee when we undertake that work, Chair.
I think on that one as well, and that comes under my area, and that the accountancy manager's been under particular pressure around this year's budget setting, which is in part why we've asked for it to be deferred. But what I would suggest to Andrew and team when they do come back, we've already put our arrangements in place for the 24-25 financial year. I think it'd be useful to have a look at the arrangements that we've started to put in place for this year as well. And those arrangements have been extended, not just looking at the savings programme, but looking at the mitigations that we've put in place for cost pressures not awarded as part of budget setting. On the 23-4 savings as well, we have been reporting regularly to Cabinet on progress against the savings programme, and 85% of the savings programme has been delivered in year, so there has been strong performance. And I know that was an issue when Audit Wales did their last financial sustainability review, so there's been good performance, but nevertheless does need the reviewed by our internal audit team.
Matthew?
Thank you, Chair. Probably one question for you, Andrew, and then one maybe wider for the committee. I think, given the deferment and obviously given my day job, it is a constant battle. So I wonder whether there's something that you can consider for next year's planning about to give better visibility of timings of audits, so you're not running into these busy points or anything. So that's one, and the second one maybe is interested in something you said on the limited assurance point. I know there's been a couple of questions on the reports already, and the debtors one caught my eye. But more generally, in terms of the committee's remit, limited assurance reports or generally internal audits in detail, or in general, give us very good visibility as a committee of whether the internal control environment of the council is working effectively. And I guess if we're not looking at limited assurance reports, and I don't wish to increase every committee's packs by 3 times, but we've got 9 for the year. My personal view is we should be looking at those. We should be looking at the materiality of them. I should be having that information from a debtor's perspective and saying, do I think there's a fundamental problem here? And having that discussion in this forum. But also the conscious, that's just my personal view, and I don't represent the whole committee. So whether maybe that's just to throw that one open.
Andrew, do you want to deal with that?
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Matthew. Yeah, in terms of visibility of deferred jobs, then we can certainly take that into consideration. It does depend throughout the year in terms of resources we've got available, the resources of the auditee, etc. But we'll certainly bear that in mind in terms of our quarterly reporting when we're updating committee. In terms of discussion around limiteds, we provide you with the main reasons why we felt that they were we can only give limited assurance in terms of that particular audit. It's open to committee to ask us the relevant questions and probe a bit further. If we can't answer those questions and you feel that the auditee is the most appropriate person to respond, then you're well within your remit to invite that manager in and ask them to justify what the situation that they're in.
Thank you, Andrew. Matt?
Just to provide some reassurance on the debtors, we obviously put the debtors one on the audit plan because we were aware of some shortcomings and some of the issues that were raised in the audit we were already aware of. It is an important area that we're taking very seriously, and since the audit report, I've been taking a monthly report to senior leadership team on the improvements that have been necessary.
Matthew?
I don't wish to be argumentative, but I guess my view on it would be that internal audit have a product in terms of reports for a reason. If we are the committee that oversee the output from internal audit to provide assurance over internal control at the council, it would seem strange that we don't see the most important of those products, but we see a bullet pointed list without the individual recommendations or the context of the audit.
We can certainly take that on board, Chair, and look to see how we report in future.
Councillor Prothero?
Thank you, Chair. Matthew raises an interesting point here, and I tend to agree with what he's saying here. If we are governance and audit, yes, we probably should be looking a little bit more in detail at things like limited assurances and asking for a little bit more information. And maybe it's just me, and I'm super curious, but I tend to want to know. If we talk about the leisure centres, I want to know why we decided not to hold regular meetings with our contractors. I want to know why we didn't undertake condition surveys. And if it means that we have to ask more questions to find out why, and then make sure that they are doing this going forward. It just seems appropriate. I think I kind of get what he's saying there. So yeah, going forward, I think that might be quite helpful for this committee, if that's possible.
Yeah, Andrew.
Thanks, Councillor. Yeah, we'll certainly take on board that comment and reflect on yours and Matthew's comments. And what we've done in the past is we've reported into committee the reasons why we felt it was unsatisfactory, therefore limited assurance. We then say we would do a follow-up. If the follow-up then also resulted in a limited opinion, then I would be advising committee to call in the respective manager, head of service, possibly director. I appreciate that that's a time lag between when that happens. So I can understand where members' concerns, and we'll certainly reflect on the comments in terms of how we report in future, Chair.
Councillor Hooper.
I just want to add some weight to both Matthew and Joe's comments. I think this is an important opportunity for us to engage early rather than wait for later. The only, as I see it, the only impact will be on this committee's time, and we can pick our way through it. As Matthew said, the reports are written, they're ready to go. All we're doing is asking for a copy of them early. And if we need to, we can go through the executive summary on them and pick out and set and be comfortable at that level, which is not dissimilar to the bullet points we have now. But I think, you know, Matthew didn't want to be argumentative. Maybe I would prefer to be argumentative. I think it's something that we should, as a committee, actually have. I think this is a good point, well made.
Okay. Councillor, Nigel, sorry.
That's fine. Thank you, Chair. Just to say, I agree as well. And in particular, the key bit for me is not the issues that were identified or raised by internal audit, but I would be particularly keen to see the response from management to understand that they are they agree with those findings, that they're acting upon them, and what they are going to be doing as a result, which would then feed into the later reviews. So I think that's a particularly key element, but I agree with everything that's been said by the various other members. Thank you.
Chair. Thanks, members. Yeah, and I appreciate your comments and understand where you're coming from. Just a kind of heads up that we will need to just review each report to make sure it's not under part 2. But obviously, if it is, members will see the reports anyway.
Thank you for that. I was going to add my couple of pennyworth, but I think most members of committee have raised the very specific issues I was going to raise. The concern I had about the leisure centres is there may well be a fundamental breakdown here in regards to the contract management from the council standpoint in regards to the leisure centres. The first two give me concerns about the performance monitoring does not take place in line with contractual requirements. The second one about the quarterly meetings. Questions I was going to ask, which I won't ask you, Andrew, because it's a matter for the department in reality, as to whether or not there are any penalties in the contract for those omissions or errors. More concerningly, again, is that 3 leisure centres not had the condition surveys. So, you know, was that a contractual requirement when the contract was let? And is there a penalty again then for that? Because if the council doesn't know through its contractor what the state of its leisure centres are, then that would give me great concern. So so that was the first one. In regards to debtors, again, I know Matt's picked it up in regards, again, what concerns me again is significantly increased. You know, what is the debtor amount in this council at this moment in time, you know, across the board? You know, what sort of what is the write-off provisions in regards to that debt, etc., etc. And again, you know, single points of contact, again, dealing with this, you know, again, there's more questions. The devil's always in the detail here in regards to it. And, you know, I was going to support Andrew because my view was going to be is that, you know, we call in the head of service or the director to account for these issues sooner rather than later, rather than let them carry on. I think, you know, the unfortunate thing is, Andrew, you picked them up. you're at the end of the sausage machine here, but you can't answer lots of these issues here because they are very fundamental directorate issues that need to be addressed. I think for me, subject to what members have said, is actually we need that executive summary from yourself, but we actually need a report from the relevant service managers or directors in regards to these points, because again there could be significant failings in regards to contractual issues here in the leisure centre. Obviously, Matt is fully aware of the debtors issue, but, you know, it has an impact. You know, the more money you get in, the better it is. But if you're writing off debt or you're not commencing proceedings, or, you know, there are limited and unreliable records of letters issued to debt holders, obstructing court action. So, you know, the council's shooting itself in the foot again there. So I think if it, you know, we suggested before, I think, Gareth, in some of these issues, we may need a special committee just to deal with these limited issues and get the people in to account for what actually is in the report and what's being done about it. So I think we note the contents of the report, but my recommendation to members is that we call these three in now. Again, they've been highlighted specifically, and we get a report from the relevant director as to, you know, what action they're taking in regards to the recommendations and the implications in regards to how it affects the council, and it's sort of you know, lots of these are financial as well. So if members would be happy with that, we see where that goes. Silence. Okay, so the recommendation is that we note the contents report, and the second one is that the director responsible and the head service for leisure centres, contract and performance monitoring, debtors and residential homes, food costs and stock control appear before the next committee with a report setting out their actions against the points raised by the auditors. Someone prepared to move? Thank you, Councillor Hooper. Can I have a seconder? Councillor Good, John, thank you. Anyone against? No? Thank you very much. Item 7 then is the recommendation monitoring. Andrew, is that you again, or Joan? Joe?
Me, thank you, Chair. Good evening. The purpose of this report is, as usual, to provide members of the committee with a position statement on the internal audit recommendations made, implemented and outstanding as at the 28th of March. Appendix A provides the detail. I'd just like to draw members' attention to Table 2. That summarises a total of 124 high and medium priority recommendations have been made following the conclusion of audits from the 23-24 annual internal audit plan. All these recommendations have been agreed, and to date 66 have been implemented and 58 have a future implementation date. No recommendations are currently overdue. Table 3 illustrates the position in respect of audits completed in the previous financial years. It is stated in Table 3 that 13 recommendations still have a future agreed implementation date, and these continue to be monitored. And again, further details of these are in Appendix A. As we always tell committee, undue delays or issues identified whilst monitoring the implementation of the recommendations are highlighted in regular meetings with SLT and relevant chief officers, and ultimately to this committee. That's all I'd like to say on that report, because members are familiar with it. Thank you.
Thank you, Joan. Any questions from members? Nigel?
Can I just ask, it may be unfair given the detail, but what happened in relation to the one outstanding recommendation for the safeguarding 21-22 audit? Because if that audit has recently now been completed, just wondered if that old recommendation is still ongoing or whether it's been updated with the new audit. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. Currently, it's showing in Appendix A with a future date. I think when the director came, he explained that they were implementing a new process, and the aim was to have that completed. I think it was July, so it's still showing as a future date. As I said, the follow-up audit has just been completed, but we've yet to work through those recommendations.
Okay. Are you happy with that, Nigel? Obviously, the director's indicated July. Clearly, we'd need to make sure that that happened by that due date.
Yeah, that's absolutely fine. I just wondered whether it was covered in the safeguarding audit itself, but obviously if that hasn't been fully completed in terms of the reporting and everything, I understand the position of the audit team, so that's fine.
Thank you, Nigel. Any other questions? Just a couple from me. Obviously, we've picked up in the previous report those 3 areas where there was limited assurance, but there are another 5 in the list, which you actually have a look at. No doubt, I'm sure Tom and Matt can go back to SLT and actually say to the relevant directors of those where they're still outstanding, and there are some matters still outstanding, like officer code of conduct, libraries and digital equipment, adult placement, shared lives, PCI, DSS follow-up, appointeeships and directorships. That these matters need to be resolved now as a matter of urgency, if possible, because the appointeeships and the deputyships, the report was done in July 23, so we're nearly approaching 12 months. If they can be resolved as a matter of urgency, then clearly the director's not going to get called in at the next meeting, so the one after. So if that could be picked up. The other issue, and if I crave your indulgence here as a committee, the issues around St. Cyrus School and the issue that Miles Punter came to committee at last time, and unfortunately I was unable to pose the question. It's all around the building compliance, and if you recall, the minute is quite specific that the director provided some context. There's an anomaly in the terms of schools and compliance. There's an issue around the service level agreement. So the council does the work, it points out any errors that are around there. Then what happens is the director added, in case of schools compliance, the council would write to the head teacher and the chair of governors requesting an update compliance certificate for the schools to do it themselves. And then if it didn't happen, response from schools would then be required. The point I was going to make is I think the director of Environment and Housing actually needs some support from the director of Education because this is an education matter as well. And in regards to moving these issues, health and safety issues are very key, certainly when not only for the council, but when Estin do inspections, health and safety is a key area that they look at. And I think that the Director of Education actually should take action in addition to that done by the Director of Environment and Housing. And I say that because there's provision under the School Standards and Organisation Act 2013, Section 3, to issue a notice. And I think to give more power to the health and safety issues is that the Director of Education may need to possibly serve a warning notice on these schools for not complying, because actually it says ground 4 of those provisions say that a separate example could be where school site or buildings are not physically safe or there are issues, and therefore pupils and staff are exposed to increased risks of accidents and occurring in the danger to their health and safety. So I'm not saying the council has to do it, but it would add more power to the housing director, environmental housing director, to serve a notice on the school to say these are real issues and actually you need to address them and not forget about them as an area. So I'm just wondering whether that could be picked up at the management team meeting, because these issues are discussed at management team, and the director actually of education looks at whether or not they've served any letters on these schools in regards to building and health and safety, and or not whether they've considered serving the warning letter. Obviously the director of education is not here to answer the question, but it is a piece of legislation which they can put in their armoury to sort some of these issues out if we've got non-compliant schools.
So the Director of Environment and Housing, Miles, will be taking a report to SLT. So as you set out, there's the opportunity there for the Director of Learning and Skills. Will should be in the room when that's brought, so they'll be aware of issues and we can pick them up as appropriate.
Point is to make her or him aware they've got a power under the legislation to actually assist Miles as well. Okay, any other questions? No, any comments? No, you see the recommendation that we note the contents of the internal status of the audit recommendations. And if certainly if the second recommendation could be in regards to health and safety of school buildings, that the Director of Education look at whether or not they would be willing to reinforce the Director of Environmental and Housing in assisting him to ensure compliance with health and safety legislation. Can I have someone to move? Thanks, Councillor Hooper. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Goodjohn, thank you. Anyone against? No. Item 8 of the agenda then is the forward work programme. Joe?
Thank you, Chair. The draft forward work programme for 24-25 is in front of you at agenda item 8. As you know, the forward work programme enables the committee to ensure it is covering a range of responsibilities as per the terms of reference. Therefore, in Appendix A, this has been produced to identify all the reports that will be presented to this committee over the coming year and the provisional timings of those reports. The next meeting is on the 17th of June and the proposed agenda items are in the table within the covering report. So therefore committee members are asked to endorse this schedule, confirm the list of people they would like to invite for each item if appropriate, and indicate whether any additional information or research is required. Thank you.
Any questions? Councillor Hooper?
In the last minutes of the last meeting, I asked a question about the Cardiff City region deal. I asked the question at every one of these meetings. We do not have a set of accounts that I understand yet available. I think it's in our remit to be able to look at these accounts, to have somebody from the Cardiff City deal here. I'm going to keep on asking until this question is resolved. I feel like this is being ignored by the City deal and it is unacceptable.
Have their accounts been settled yet?
I'm still not aware that their accounts have been signed off yet, but I'll follow up with them again. I do every committee hours. I do go back and ask the question.
Can I suggest that we invite the Chief Executive of Cardiff City Deal or the Director, Kelly Byrne, to the next meeting?
I'm just trying to think what we would get out of them until the accounts are audited and signed off. I think it would be better that they are signed off and then they can be commenting and feeding back to us on their audited accounts rather than draft ones. Because certainly we'd be in danger of asking them back again once they were signed off and audited. So I think if we can hold off, let me have a chat with them, see where they are. If it looks like it's going to be some further time, then perhaps we do get her along in the interim. So let me get in touch with them tomorrow.
Yeah, the issue is there will be accounts for whatever it is, 21, 22, 22, 23, 23, 24, won't there? So if we're looking at presumably the 22, 23 accounts, they should have been signed off by now, shouldn't they, by Audit Wales?
Certainly, I'm more aware of where Audit Wales are with county council accounts, and certainly when I last spoke to them, there were 2 or 3 county councils still outstanding from 22-3, and at least one from 21-2 as well. And typically, Audit Wales, and this is a UK wide practice, do focus on the upper tier bodies first, and then they will look at joint committees and Cardiff Capital Region type accounts. And I do know, for instance, their work with our housing benefits subsidy claim is completed somewhat after our main accounts audit. So it's not ideal, but it's not exceptional either.
Thank you, Matt. I think the point that I'd like to be put on the record is this is an issue of transparency. The council taxpayers of the Vale of Glamorgan are going to be starting to contribute to the city deal in a bigger way going forward, and this is where the big money gets spent, and it feels as though this is something that isn't seeing sufficient light of day, which is obviously the important thing, particularly from this committee. And it's something I know that people who are concerned about delivering services that are for Vale residents, if they're concerned about where this is, the changes that are being made elsewhere, they need to know it. I'm going to keep pushing this point. I think it's an important point. I'm glad for the chair's support in this, and I think other members too will want to see this resolved. If the director needs to come here and talk through other accounts, I'd support that. If she needs to come again, I'd support that. I think this is important.
Yeah, can we find out off Audit Wales when they're likely to conclude the accounts, Matt, as well, rather than City Deal? Because I assume they've gone to Audit Wales for auditing. Yeah, okay. Any other questions? No, can I also suggest that if we need a special meeting in between, Gareth, talking to whether Tom and Matt in regards to the three areas we're calling in, because they may take some time to deal with, is that there's a meeting set up specifically for those issues rather than being broiled with the rest of the reports, because there's still 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 reports coming to the June committee. If that could be recommended by the directors, if they're happy for that, or we could take them at that meeting. But what we don't want to do is overload it and not have enough time to do the relevant work on it. So could you investigate that?
I can indeed, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. The other thing is, do you want to know whether that's a matter for the forward work programme or it's a democratic matter? But again, we need the appointment of chair on there.
Yes, Chair, that's a standing item on my list.
Ah, there we are. I knew it would be. I knew it would be. Okay, so we approve the draft programme, subject to whether or not there's a need for a special meeting. Someone prepared to move, please? Thank you, Councillor Hooper. Thank you, Matthew. Seconded. Anyone against? No. Item 9 on the agenda, any item which Chair decides urgent, there are none. If we go into part 2, which we're not going to, but there are no items which we decided urgent for part 2. Can I just say thank you to members for attending the meeting, for their contributions to the meeting. Can I wish Councillor Goodjohn a get well soon and hope his cold is no longer sick, and have a safe journey home, those who are here in the chamber, and if you're at home, stay safe. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you. Good night.